The alert first appeared as a soft pulse of blue light on Ambassador Rest's console, an outdated signal protocol no one had used in centuries. He had been reviewing dull trade documents, the kind of administrative work that made his joints ache more than age ever could. When the pulse blinked again, his four hands froze. That code, it belonged to an era most of the galaxy preferred to forget. Reth hesitated before opening the transmission. When he finally did, the message unfolded like a ghost clawing its way out of time. To the Galactic Council. The soul isolation term has concluded. Humanity requests diplomatic reestablishment. Reth's two hearts stumbled. Most of the younger Curry didn't even remember Earth. They treated the old stories like myths, fairy tales about the strange, fierce creatures who once reached out beyond their homeworld. But Reth remembered everything. He had spoken to humans himself. He had watched their grief when the endless dawn perished. 3 centuries ago, the Curry had saved Earth from annihilation. A titanic asteroid had been on course to shatter the human homeworld, and Earth's technology back then was primitive at best. Their distress calls were almost a whisper across the stars, desperate, hopeless, sent with no expectation of a reply. But the Curry answered. The colony's ship Endless Dawn diverted from its long voyage, using its experimental gravity well generators to drag the asteroid off course. Every Curry aboard knew what the attempt would cost. All 50,000 died. Earth survived. The humans had begged to repay them, offering resources and knowledge. But Curry leadership had asked instead for silence, a 300-year isolation period for humanity to mature, to temper their dangerous brilliance with wisdom. The galaxy believed humans would break the agreement within decades. They never did. Humanity vanished into its star system. No ships, no signals, no expansion, just silence. So complete, the galaxy gradually erased them from memory, until today. Reth brought the message to the council chamber personally. The moment the transmission played, the air grew thick with disbelief and tension. Director Fun, a thin, gray Helixian with 6 blinking eyes, scoffed first. Humans? Returning? Impossible. They're likely extinct. A relic AI probably sent that message. You do not understand, Reth insisted. Humans honor their word. They... Promises degrade with time, another delegate interrupted. 3 centuries? Absurd. Reth's voice hardened. Humans remember. Trust me, they remember everything. The chamber argued for hours, finally agreeing to send an automated probe. Reth demanded to accompany it. Something in his aging bones, something instinctual, told him the galaxy was about to change. 3 days later, his vessel emerged at the boundary of Sol territory. A ship waited for him. It was nothing like the Council's sleek cruisers or the heavy cargo haulers of their allies. This craft seemed carved from obsidian, silent but undeniably powerful, a control threat masked in elegance. It wasn't large, maybe 100 crew at most, but every line of its design radiated purpose. A hail came instantly. Reth accepted. A human woman appeared, dark skin, close-cut hair, eyes sharp with quiet intensity. Her uniform bore only a single insignia, a stylized earth encircled by stars. Ambassador Reth, she said. I am in Brooks, humanity's appointed voice. Reth felt his throat tighten. You honor the agreement. And his lips curved slightly. Your people saved every soul on our world. We don't forget sacrifices like that. Every school child learns the names of the 50,000 Curry who died for us. We carry them with us. Reth swallowed hard. The galaxy has changed, and Brooks. My people have changed. The fading sickness has taken nearly all hope. We know, and replied quietly. And we're here because you once saved us. Now we return the debt. You cannot mean that, Reth whispered. Not after all this time. We do, and said, show us the way to your homeworld. Let us help. Reth thought of his children, both lost to the fading. Thought of the grandchildren he'd never meet. Thought of his species, thinning year after year, their extinction predicted within 2 generations. Slowly he nodded. Very well, I will take you home. Then, and said with solemn finality, let the restoration begin. The journey to Quran, the Curry homeworld, took only a few hours. Human engineering had grown frighteningly efficient. But for Ref, each minute felt stretched taut, like a string on the verge of snapping. He had spent the trip watching the human vessel, its smooth corridors and softly glowing panels, its crew moving in organized silence. Humans, Reth observed, had changed. Not physically. They still looked like the strange, two-armed, two-legged creatures he remembered. But there was something deeper, a collected intensity, a deliberate composure that echoed through every movement. They were restrained but not weak, patient but certainly not passive. When the ship descended into Quran's atmosphere, Reth's breath caught. His world, once vibrant and crowded, now looked dimmed. There were still oceans of shimmering blue and continent-spanning forests, but the cities felt hollow. Lights that once glittered like constellations were scarce now. Many towers that used to hum with life had gone dark. Transit lanes were empty. Parks were overgrown. Silence clung to every street. Reth had prepared himself for this, but seeing it through the eyes of another species, a species that once revered the curry, made the sorrow sharper. Beside him, and Brooks studied the world below with a face carved from determination. How many remain? She asked. The question wasn't cold. It was clinical, the tone of someone preparing to solve a problem, not mourn it. Dr. Henry Obasanjo, one of the human specialists, replied before Reth could. Current estimates, 192 million curry alive, down from the estimated population of 14 billion 3 centuries ago, and exhaled tightly, less than 2%. It will continue accelerating, Henry added grimly. Decline curves always steepen near the end. Ref lowered his head. The fading had claimed both of his children before they reached 20. Most Curry families had similar stories. Some had lost their entire bloodlines, and rested a hand on the console. We came at the right moment, then. Her voice didn't waver. The human ship touched down on a circular landing platform just outside the capital. A small Curry delegation stood there waiting. Their skin patterns, shifting colors revealing emotion, showed muted blues and grays, the hues of sorrow carried so long it had become familiar. At the forefront was matriarch Sela, ruler of the Curry people. Though age bowed her spine, dignity radiated from her like heat from a star. Her skin shimmered in ripples of silver and soft blue, revealing her struggle to remain composed. Ambassador Brooks, she said, inclining her head, you honor us. And did something unexpected. She stepped forward, placed one knee to the ground, and bowed deeply. Matriarch Sela, she said, voice resonant and unwavering. 3 centuries ago, your people gave their lives to save my entire world. Humanity has not forgotten. Every name of the endless dawn is etched into a memorial visible from orbit. Every child on Earth learns the story of your sacrifice. The matriarch's colors shifted wildly. Surprise, grief, gratitude, blending into a mosaic no human eye could decode. You may rise, ambassador, Sela said softly. You owe us nothing now. The agreement was fulfilled long ago. And stood straight, meeting the matriarch's gaze without hesitation. Respectfully, that's where we disagree. You saved us. Now we save you. There is no debate. The matriarch's expression dimmed. The fading is beyond cure. We have accepted our fate, and motioned to Dr. Henry. Our specialist will be reviewing everything. We don't accept defeat without proof. Not ever. Henry gave the matriarch a respectful nod. I will require full access to your medical archives, current patients, genetic history, and environmental data. We need the entire picture. You shall have it, Sela said. Though I warn you, the greatest minds from across the galaxy have already tried. The disease broke them. Henry smiled faintly. Then perhaps what you need is a mind too stubborn to break. The matriarch blinked in confusion. Is that a human trait? It is, and translated. Our medical teams don't surrender. They walk through once bustling courtyards, now covered with invasive mosses. Flowers drooped from neglect. Benches sat empty. Children no longer laughed here. The central medical complex looked imposing from afar, but inside, it felt like a mausoleum. Whole wings were dark and used. Only a handful of patients were present. those with symptoms still treatable. Henry and the human scientific team entered immediately, calling for data, scanning equipment, samples, and workstations. Their energy seemed almost alien compared to the quiet resignation of the Curry, and remained with the matriarch in the deserted garden outside. Ambassador, Sela said quietly, why do you truly care? Your world is safe. Your species thrives. Why risk so much for us? And didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than before. When I was a child, my grandmother took me to the Endless Dawn Memorial. She told me that 50,000 people who had never met us died, so we could grow up and see the sky. I made a promise that day, not to her, but to myself. She looked up at the dimming sky over Quran. We don't abandon those who save us. Not ever. Sela's colors warmed to a faint gold, the rarest expression of hope. For the first time in centuries, the Curry matriarch believed survival might still be possible. The next 3 days blurred together inside the Curry Medical Complex. Human scientists operated with a level of intensity that startled even Reth, who had once watched humans rebuild entire star bases during the old border crisis. They slept in brief rotations, argued fiercely, scribbled equations on transparent boards, and pored over Curry genomes that had baffled galactic research teams for centuries. Matriarch Sela visited the lab frequently, always expecting to find the humans defeated. But every time she entered, they seemed more energized, more determined. It was as if somewhere inside them, a spark had ignited, and now it was driving them to chase answers with relentless momentum. On the morning of the 4th day, Ref found Dr. Henry Obasanjo standing alone, staring at a set of sequences projected in front of him. For once, he wasn't taking notes. He wasn't running a simulation. He was simply staring. Doctor? Ref asked, approaching cautiously. Are you? Henry held up a hand. I've been trying to talk myself out of what I found. I failed. Ref's chest tightened. Is it hopeless? No, Henry whispered. That's the problem. It's solvable. Too solvable. Ref's color patterns flickered with confusion. I don't understand. Henry sighed heavily and tapped a control. The projection zoomed in, revealing strands of Curry DNA, fractured, decayed, riddled with anomalies. But the pattern wasn't chaotic. It was too orderly, too arranged. This, Henry said, pointing at a repeating sequence, isn't natural. This is a mutation. This was inserted. Intentionally. Reth staggered back as if struck. You mean someone caused a fading? Yes, Henry said. 287 years ago. Roughly one generation after the Endless Dawn sacrificed themselves for Earth. He pulled up another screen. Genetic markers, chemical signatures, and lab techniques coded into the modified strands. And these signatures, Henry continued, belong to one species only. The display shifted, revealing tall, crystalline beings with branch-like limbs and faceted eyes. The Voskor Concord, Henry said. Reth froze. The Voss engineered our extinction? I'm afraid so. At that moment, and Brooke strode into the room, summoned by Henry's urgent message. Sela followed second behind, her breathing sharp and uneven. Explain, and said, voice deadly calm. Henry did. No embellishments. No dramatics. Just facts, cold and unforgiving. As he spoke, the lab fell silent. Sela sank onto a chair, her forearms trembling violently. Her skin flashed sickly shades of yellow and white. Fear and horror intertwined. Why? She whispered. Why would they do this? We had no conflict with them. We posed no threat. Henry's voice softened. We don't know. Yet. And, however, had already gone quiet. Too quiet. Reth had seen this expression on a human once before, during the final days of the border crisis. It was a calm humans only reached when they crossed a threshold from concern to absolute resolve. Can it be treated? And asked without looking away from the genetic model. Yes, Henry said instantly. Now that we know what was done and how it was done, we can counteract it. I will need time, but I can build a cure. A breath shuddered through the room, half relief, half disbelief. then and turned to Sela. Matriarch, she said, your extinction was engineered. Deliberately, quietly, cruelly. That is not something we can ignore. Sela looked up slowly. What will you do? And expression hardened into something carved from steel. What we must. She glanced toward Commander Patricia Walsh, who had been listening silently at the doorway. Walsh informed Fleet Command. Highest priority relay. Patricia nodded once. Message channel secure. Standing by. And spoke without hesitation. Prepare a diplomatic summons to the Voskhor Concord. Full human delegation. And alert the fleet. Strategic Group Theta Prime is to assemble on standby. Reth's blood chilled. Theta Prime was not a research group. It was not a relief team. It was humanity's rapid intervention strike force. Created during the isolation era, rumored to be capable of dismantling entire armadas. Ambassador, Reth said carefully, what will you say to the Voss? And looked at the hologram of the DNA again, the encoded signature of extinction, stamped like a death sentence. We're going to ask why they tried to kill our friends, she said. Then we're going to ensure they understand what mistake that was. Sela stared at her with disbelief and a faint tremor of hope. What lesson will you teach them? She whispered, and didn't blink. The same lesson humanity learned the day your people died for us. You do not harm those we care about, not without consequences that echo across star systems. The human fleet did not arrive quietly. The Voskhor Concord prided itself on its border security, an intricate lattice of sensor satellites, defense buoys, and automated patrol drones. For centuries, no vessel had crossed their territorial boundary undetected. That changed the moment the first human warship slipped out of fold space. The Resolute Dawn emerged like a silent blade, followed by vessel after vessel, sleek, angular ships with dark hulls designed to swallow radar signatures. Within minutes, nearly 50 human ships formed a wall along the Voss border, their engines pulsing like a heartbeat of something enormous and ancient. Admiral Elias Renard stood at the command interface of the Resolute Dawn, hands clasped behind his back as tactical data streamed across the displays. His face was calm, but the controlled tension in his posture revealed the truth. This mission mattered more than any he'd undertaken in his lifetime. Fleet status, he asked. 48 ships in formation, the tactical officer replied. Strike units primed. Defensive coils charged. All systems nominal. Good, Renard said. Open a broad-spectrum channel. Across Voskhor space, millions of crystalline beings stopped what they were doing as their comm systems flickered, overridden by a transmission they could not block. A human face appeared, stern, weathered, and radiating quiet authority. This is Admiral Elias Renard of the Sol Collective Defense Fleet. Voskhor leadership is required to acknowledge this broadcast immediately. His tone was diplomatic, but the threat beneath it was unmistakable. In your archives, you'll find entries documenting the genetic weapon deployed against the Curry people 287 years ago. You will find internal communications authorizing the project, field reports from the operatives who distributed the agent, and population projections confirming the intended extinction. He let the words sit in the air, sharp as shattered glass. We have all of it, Renard continued. We know what you did. On the Voss homeworld. Panic cracked through their ruling chamber. Supreme Synchron Varric, their highest political figure, stared at the screen in disbelief. How? He demanded. How did they obtain our classified archives? One of his science ministers swallowed nervously. The humans bypassed our internal firewalls in under 10 minutes. Impossible, Varric snapped. Sir, they breached the system using what appears to be pre-war Earth encryption tools. Varric stiffened. Pre-war Earth was known for its crude technologies, brute force systems that used raw computational power rather than elegance. For the Voss, whose entire civilization prized precision and efficiency, such methods had always seemed barbaric. But now those barbaric methods had unraveled their darkest secret. Respond to them. Varric finally ordered. Deny everything. Stall for time. And so the Voskhor sent their official statement. We reject your accusations. You have no authority here. Withdraw immediately. The reply reached Admiral Renard less than a minute later. He read it once, exhaled, and nodded to his officers. They refused accountability. We proceed. Human ships advanced, not firing, not threatening directly, but pushing forward with implacable purpose. The vast military scrambled. Their fleet, over 600 vessels, mobilized around their home world. The formation was textbook perfect, a defensive lattice designed for graceful, predictable engagements. Unfortunately for them, humanity no longer fought predictable wars. Begin Phase 1, Renard commanded. The human fleet surged forward, weapons powering up. Vast ships fired first. Precise energy beams, engineered for surgical damage. They were meant to disable, not destroy. Human shields absorbed the impacts with minimal disruption. Then humanity returned fire. Not elegant beams, not refined energy pulses. Kinetic storms, missile swarms, radiation blasts. Weapons the Voss considered primitive, outdated, barbarous. But primitive weapons launched with human ingenuity created devastation the Voss could not counter. Their shields flickered, their formations shattered, their pilots hesitated, unaccustomed to the raw, relentless brutality of Death World combat. Within the first 10 minutes, 19 Voss-Corps ships fell. Not destroyed, disabled with precision. Humanity wanted the message to be unmistakable, but they would not slaughter civilians or soldiers who weren't responsible for genocide. Target command vessels only, Renard ordered. Disable, do not annihilate. And yet the psychological impact was devastating. The Voss had believed themselves masters of strategy. They had never faced a species who learned strategy on a world where even the oceans tried to kill them. Within an hour, their entire defensive line disintegrated. On the surface, Synchron Varric watched the battle collapse and felt a rare, terrifying sensation ripple through his crystalline form. Fear, pure, undiluted fear. Not because of the ships, not because of the weapons, but because he realized one truth. Humans were not attacking out of conquest. They were attacking out of loyalty. And no logic-bound species could predict the wrath of a loyal human. Finally, Varric broke. Send a surrender message. Immediately, the transmission went out, trembling through every channel. Human ships halted instantly. Renard allowed a slow, controlled breath. Open a channel. Varric appeared dim, cracked, terrified. What do you want? He stammered. Renard's answer was calm and unmistakable. We want you to answer for what you did to the Curry, and we want every single individual involved in their engineered extinction turned over to us. Now! The Voss-Corps capitulation happened so abruptly that even Admiral Renard's bridge crew hesitated, unsure if it was a trap or simply the moment their enemy finally understood the weight of their crimes. The surrender message flickered across every human display, short, panicked, and unmistakably genuine. This is Synchron Varric of the Voss-Corps Concord. We request immediate cessation of hostilities. We will comply. We will provide the individuals responsible for Project Nullseed. His voice cracked. Just withdraw your fleet. Renard studied the trembling crystalline being on the screen. Fear had dimmed the reflective glow in the Synchron's facets to a dull, muddy gray. For a species known for their mathematical calm, it was equivalent to sobbing. Transmission confirmed, the calm officer said. Renard nodded once. Hold position. No advance. Inform Ambassador Brooks that the Voss-Corps have agreed to hand over the perpetrators. If humanity had been a conquering empire, this would have been the moment to strike. Invade, annex, impose rule. But the fleet did not move. The ships remained where they were, suspended in silent, disciplined formation. It was a silence that unnerved the Voss most, because silence meant certainty. Silence meant control. Silence meant the humans didn't need to threaten them further. They already had the upper hand. And everyone knew it. A small transport emerged from the Voss surface hours later, carrying the accused. Renard met them aboard the Resolute Dawn, accompanied by a squad of armed Marines whose presence made even the crystalline Voss scientists hesitate before stepping forward. The Voss delegation consisted of 6 individuals, each one responsible for a piece of Project Nullseed, the engineered plague that had slowly erased generations of Curry life. Dr. Kiven, the architect of the original genome destabilizer. Minister Zora, who approved the covert deployment. Two field operatives who had embedded the agent into Curry agricultural systems centuries ago. A data archivist who suppressed evidence. And a military strategist who calculated projected extinction curves. They stood silently before Renard as he reviewed the data Crystal Varek had provided, containing every detail of the atrocity. Finally, he addressed them. You understand why you are being taken into custody. The Voss remained silent. None of them attempted to deny their involvement. Voss-core logic left no room for self-delusion. They had been caught. Their calculus had failed. What will happen to us? The eldest scientist asked, voice crystalline but trembling. You will stand trial, Renard said. Not a human trial. A Curry one. The room chilled. A Curry tribunal? The archivist whispered. But they deserve justice, Renard interrupted. And you deserve to face the people whose futures you tried to erase. One of the operatives stepped forward. We acted for stability. The Curry were expanding rapidly. Our projections showed. Renard cut him off with a raised hand. You murdered billions. No justification exists. Not scientific, not political, not strategic. His gaze hardened. Humanity has fought wars, yes. We have made mistakes. But we do not commit genocide. Not because we don't have a capability. Oh, we do, but because we made a choice to be better. He stepped closer, his voice low. You made the opposite choice. A shuttle was called. The Voss perpetrators were escorted aboard, still silent, their crystalline bodies dimmed by shame. Back on Quran, and Brooks received a message from Renard just as Henry Obasanjo finalized the genetic treatment formula, and entered the medical wing, and found Henry staring at a vial of stabilized nanomedical agents, tiny machines encoded with Curry DNA repair sequences. It's done, Henry said softly. The cure. And felt the breath leave her chest. How soon could we deploy? Immediately, Henry said. The nanites will rebuild the damaged sequences over several cycles. Full recovery will take months, but progression of the fading will stop within days. Matriarch Sela entered behind them, walking slowly, as though afraid the moment would vanish if she moved too quickly. Is it truly a cure? She asked, voice shaking. Henry handed her the vial. This, matriarch, is the key to saving every Curry child yet to be born. Sela's colors exploded in sunburst gold, the rarest sign of overwhelming emotion. Thank you, she whispered. Thank all of you, and nodded and stepped aside, letting the weight of the moment settle around them. There's more, she finally said. The Voss Corps have surrendered the architects of the fading. They will face judgment here, under Curry law. Sela closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the gold had softened but not faded. For the first time in centuries, she said, justice is not something we dream of. It is real. And rested a hand gently on the matriarch's upper arm. And so is your future. Together, they walked toward the ward where the first Curry would receive treatment. Outside, children too young to understand watched with glowing patterns of curiosity rippling across their skin. Humanity had returned to the galaxy. And for the Curry, that return meant rebirth. 5 years passed, a brief flicker on a cosmic scale. But for Quran, it felt like a second birth. Cities that once dimmed under the shadow of extinction now pulsed with renewed energy. Buildings reopened. Gardens bloomed again. Schools, silent for generations, were filled with young Curry whose skin shimmered with vibrant patterns. Their laughter echoed through halls that had long forgotten such sounds. Dr. Henry Obasanjo's cure had done more than halt the fading. It had restored the Curry future. Their population, once a dying ember, surged past 1 billion and continued climbing. And every time a new child was born, the Curry elders whispered a quiet blessing to the stars. May humanity walk with you. Matriarch Sela stood on a balcony overlooking the capital, watching skyways filled with Curry and human transports weaving between towers. For the first time in centuries, the planet felt alive, growing, breathing, and Brooke stood beside her, older now, but carrying the same focused strength she brought from Earth half a decade before. We are naming an institute after you, Sela said, not as a request, but a decision. The Brooks Academy of Interstellar Ethics. We want future generations to learn about the moment humanity returned. And chuckled. I'm not sure I deserve that honor. You do, Sela said firmly. Honor is earned, not requested. She wasn't wrong. Humanity had not simply helped. They had committed themselves. They protected the Curry when the galaxy hesitated. They pursued justice when others bowed to politics. They built alliances where mistrust had reigned for centuries. Even the Galactic Council now treated human envoys with wary respect, like one might treat a storm, beautiful, powerful, and capable of reshaping entire landscapes. Later that afternoon, a young Curry approached and in the courtyard below the academy. Her skin glowed a soft lavender of excitement. Ambassador Brooks, the girl said in careful English, may I ask something for my school project? And smiled. Of course. Why did your people name your flagship Endless Dawn? My teacher said it's the same name as our Lost Colony ship. And knelt so she was at eye level with the child. We named our ship after yours, she said gently, because we wanted to remember the sacrifice your people made. The original Endless Dawn didn't just save Earth. It gave us the future we live in now. Every time one of our ships carries that name, we honor your fallen. The girl beamed, patterns of bright gold rippling across her skin. Then your ship carries our story too. It does, and said, and it always will. The child rushed back to her classmates, eager to share the answer. Sela watched from the walkway above, her colors shifting warmly. Humans, she said, amused, are surprisingly good with our young. I have nieces at home, and replied, shrugging. They train me well. Over the years, more species reached out to humanity, not out of fear, but out of recognition. A mining colony ravaged by pirates asked for help stabilizing the defenses. A research outpost saw human medical teams during a viral outbreak. A border world nearly plunged into conflict invited humans to mediate, and humanity responded, not as conquerors, not as overseers, but as partners. We will help, and often said, when helping is right. It became something of a mantra across the outer rim. When diplomacy teetered, call the humans. When disaster struck, seek the humans. When injustice spread, alert the humans. Some species whispered that humanity had become the galaxy's unofficial shield. They weren't entirely wrong. One evening, as and prepared her annual report to Earth, Reth visited her quarters. The old Curry moved more slowly these days, but his eyes still carried their steady brightness. Good evening, Anne, he said, easing into a seat. I hope I'm not interrupting. Never, she replied. What's on your mind? Reth folded his lower pair of hands thoughtfully. I wanted to thank you, not only for saving my people, but for something larger. Larger? And asked. Reth nodded. You reminded the galaxy that honor is not a myth. That promises matter. That justice is not an inconvenience. For centuries, our civilizations drifted into apathy. But humans reignited something we'd forgotten and softened. We learned that from you, from the 50,000 Curry who saved Earth. Ref looked out the window at the glowing city. Do you know what our children say now when facing something difficult? What? They asked themselves, what would a human do? And blinked. That's a lot of pressure. Yes, Reth agreed. But if any species can carry such a burden, it is yours. You were forged on a world that tried to kill you every day. And instead of becoming tyrants, you chose to defend others. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. The galaxy has changed, Reth said softly. Because of you. And shook her head gently. Because of us. Humans and Curry together. In the years that followed, the ripple of human influence spread farther than anyone predicted. Not through war, not through domination, but through action, quiet, steady, unwavering. Humanity kept its promises, protected its allies, defied injustices others ignored. And everywhere they went, they carried the same message. You are not alone. The age of human isolation was over. A new era had dawned. Not of conquest, not of fear, but a single powerful truth. Humanity remembers. Humanity protects. and humanity stands with its friends. Forever.